Hey everybody, Mike Naso here from IPR365.com and PodWeather.com with the latest on the tropics. It is June 1st, 2010. That means it is the first day of hurricane season 2010. And taking a look at the names this year, it may look familiar just in 1998, if you can believe it's been that long. And in 2004, we used these names. We're going to start the year off with Alex, which in 2004, of course, was a hurricane near North Carolina. In '98, Bonnie was a hurricane near North Carolina. Colin's a new name that replaced Charlie, as well as Fiona, Igor, and Julia on this year's name list. Of course, in 2004, we got all the way down to Otto in that historic season. Right now, indications are we are looking at a very active hurricane season this year, and we could potentially get well down the name list and perhaps even exhaust a name list if we have that many storms that we'd have to be concerned about. Let's take a look out there right now and see what we have, and you may go, uh-oh, what's this, Mike? Is this a tropical depression developing? It does not appear to be so yet. Tropical storm Agatha made landfall in Central America near Guatemala and this region here the other day, and it was starting to really ramp up at landfall. Winds never responded. It only got up to 45 miles per hour. But it moved this way and relocated north and made landfall. So obviously Agatha's gone, but the remnant of the moisture and all that moved up into the Caribbean and has now kind of taken an eastward jaunt in the last 12 to 24 hours, and there is still obviously a bursting of convection there that we have to be concerned about. So as this continues to move on towards the north and northeast, we're going to watch it very carefully. Another thing you may notice here, and we here at IPR spoke to forecasters at the National Hurricane Center last week about this, the ITCZ, the Intertropical Convergence Zone, appears to be pretty far north for this time of year. You can see a lot of wave inactivity up here, and if this continues on in through the rest of June and into July, that could mean we have more waves moving in that could potentially develop. But of course, it's all up to whether or not upper level winds would favor that or not. Now, the latest model map for our Invest 91L is currently taking it off to the northeast, maybe the north-northeast, and most models generally agree somewhere with a bend back to the east. Now, whether or not this loop occurs, and if it occurs sooner, keeps it over water, what happens? Right now it doesn't look like much, but it's still something you're going to want to keep an eye on because you never know what could happen in the Western Caribbean in June. Now here's the latest wind shear map, and for those of you just tuning in for the first time, what I've done for the last 5 years is I make sure to usually show this shear map and the shear tendencies. Now what this shear map shows is the direction of the upper level winds and the wind shear and the strength of it. For example, if our system here in the Western Caribbean is currently on two edges of wind shear. Right now it's on the edge of about 50 knots of very intense wind shear, and it's on the edge of very, very low 5-knot wind shear. And then in the middle is where it increases gradually. So it's not exactly very favorable. Now what you'll see a lot also is areas of wind shear of such as, say, 5 knots, 10 knots, upper level anticyclones, and when these get over the tops of hurricanes like the one we have down here, usually then you start to worry that you may have very, very favorable conditions for development, which is why we're going to take any situation we see very carefully and watch it closely, as well as the model guidance. Now the other map we show all the time is this map, and this is the shear tendency map, and the blues on this map generally indicate where you have favorable wind shear. You can see right now the Western Caribbean in through the Eastern Pacific. When you get to black here, that's where you're talking about wind shear that is extremely favorable for development. And then when you get to the red here, you're talking 60, 70, even the pink here, 80 knots of wind shear. That is horrific for development. You do not want to see a hurricane over these black waters here, because that'll only mean more favorable upper level winds. Also is important in the direction they're moving. If we have orange winds here of high wind shear, and we have a hurricane sitting right here over the blue ones, and we have the orange winds in this direction and orange winds in that direction. That generally means that's favorable outflow and not necessarily impacting the storm. However, we had a storm here, and you have orange winds here blowing in that direction. That's westerly wind shear. It looks like this hurricane season wind shear could be pretty low for many storms, given the indicators, but you just don't know yet until the systems actually get going. And here's the latest satellite loop of the western Atlantic as the sun goes down. You can see our systems there continuing to track. Pretty good blow up of convection. The movement's been like this. Again, it's forecast by many of the models to kind of just stick around here over the next several days. I think the worst part is it's going to bring more rainfall to areas such as, say, Haiti, eastern Cuba, the Cayman Islands, and so we're going to keep an eye on it. It's not much to look at now. Note the beautiful thunderstorm cloud tops blowing up right there at the end over areas of Honduras as the sun goes down, Belize as well. You got some thunderstorms. A little cluster of storms here in the central Gulf of Mexico to have to worry about if you're out there on the Gulf of Mexico. Now you can see further south of Costa Rica we do have another system spinning right here. This is a little twist, and we're going to watch this very carefully to see if anything happens in the eastern Pacific. Some of the models, the NAM mostly, have been indicating that we're going to continue to see these pulses come off and move into the Caribbean or the East Pac, so we're going to have to keep an eye on that. You can also see we have these waters here, and I highlighted where the Gulf oil spill is, and then where you can see the hot waters here around Florida and the Gulf Coast, all the way up the East Coast, the Gulf Stream there. If we do get a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico in June or July, water temperature-wise, it probably wouldn't have a problem. That's not to say wind shear couldn't always be a factor for the system. In the Eastern Pacific, we do have an invest area out there, and it's sitting right in here. And it was looking a little bit better yesterday, but it's since kind of deteriorated. There is some wind shear heading into it, like I mentioned before, that can really shred a tropical cyclone or a system trying to become a tropical cyclone. And we'll keep an eye on it to see if this becomes BLAS. Thus far, the Eastern Pacific is 1-0 on the Atlantic, but the Atlantic looks to be very, very active this year, so don't really think that just because the Eastern Pacific is one storm ahead, that the Atlantic will be less active than the Pacific will this year. That'll about do it for the first day of the 2010 hurricane season. I'll see you next time, and all throughout hurricane season 2010, I'm Mike Naso from Internet Partnership Radio. Stay tuned to IPR365.com.